And which I wouldn't tell you which currency though.
Well, I'm so poor I'll take anyone.
It's recorded.
Okay.
They just pushed the button, so thank you.
So the other thing that we need to remember is when we're writing, if we use a word like more than or less than, then we need to have a frame of reference. We can't say something is more, it's got to be more than something. So for example, I was reading something that somebody had written the other day. They said, university has taken great strides in improving. Well, where are you coming from and where are you now? Doesn't mean anything, it's just fluff. There's no evidence, there's no data to support this alleged improvement or these alleged great strides. Right? So everything we say needs to be justified by the data. If not, it just becomes somebody's opinion. And the whole reason why we do surveys, we do research, is to push out opinion and replace it with the best facts that we have. So facts and opinion buck heads. If I've got information that you don't have, but I've got facts, then it doesn't matter what you think of your opinion, my facts should, if we're logical, push out your opinion. So there's a constant disagreement between those two. So please say the obvious thing first and say the big picture statements first. So think of that picture I just put up. Now we have to say it as it is. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show you a little video. It only lasts a minute, there is no sound, but I want you to think about the data that I'm giving you, and you can tell me what you see. Stage where students usually start to laugh. All right, so what did you see? I gave you a set of data. Any offers?
Well, what I was seeing was fight broke out between the triangles.
Fight broke out between what?
The triangles.
Triangles? You don't see our fight?
That's what I saw.
That's what you saw. What did anybody else see? Anybody agree with that? Anybody disagree with that? You saw a fight?
Let me tell you the story what I saw. That circle and small triangle were out, and they were out late. Big triangle said, well, where's I guess the circle was the person or the child, if I will use that term. Child coming.
The circle is the child, Wendy's told us.
And big triangle now is fussing with little triangle because you had circle out late.
Circle has been naughty.
Yes. Well, maybe not, I don't know. And so now, then circle and little triangle were able to get back out again, and then big triangle was trying to find them.
The big triangle trying to find them, and then what
Because
happened?
they were running around.
Running around.
And then they got out and they ran away, and big triangle broke down the house.
Big triangle broke down the house. Any other suggestions?
What I think I saw or observed was what we kind of know as black crab syndrome to me.
Oh, black crab syndrome, right?
Yes, where one person was on the inside and they allowed something foreign, being the circle,
The circle is foreign, right?
yes, but did not allow something that was like the triangle inside. And once the circle was in, they were fine, but once the triangle got in, which was like, they preferred to destroy the whole thing, instead of allowing everyone, I guess, inside to grow.
Okay, so the house was destroyed because they couldn't share it.
Yes.
All right. This is a classic example of bringing our baggage to the table. Triangles cannot chase or fight another triangle. A triangle is a triangle. That's what you saw. And you saw a circle. You simply saw them move. Your baggage, all your experiences in the past projected a story that doesn't exist. You invented it based upon the data which I gave you, because of the baggage which we bring to the table without even knowing that we bring it to the table. That's what we need to avoid when we interpret the data. The data I just gave you was the movements of triangles and circles, not people, not good people, not bad people, not foreign people, not anybody people, because a triangle's a triangle. But we bring the baggage to the table and we start to impose interpretations, if you like, unwittingly. And of course, the question I asked you was slightly leading anyway, so I'm part of the devil in the whole thing, but it doesn't matter. But what you've said is what many people say, right? Many people see this as a conflict, if you like, between the triangles and the circles. The circle is quite often thought of as a child. You have a big triangle who is the male, and the smaller triangle who is the female, or that sort of thing. And the box is usually said to be a house. But you need to disengage yourself between the baggage which you inadvertently have, and we all have baggage, and the data which you have collected. And you need to just describe the data as it is, not how we think it is. Because all those stories that you mentioned are, if you like, Tom and Jerry, what I call Tom and Jerry stories, right? We've seen so many cartoons of people chasing around, and we just impose that on that. So that's something that we need to safeguard against. So the other thing that we must also avoid when we're writing up and interpreting our data are adjectives and adverbs. I hope there's nobody from the School of English here, right?
I've never heard that.
Avoid them. You dig yourself a hole. Because people will say, oh, I was surprised, or this was a shock, or this was big, this was small. Well, what do you mean by big? What do you mean by small? If you just say it was 60%, finish. You avoid the holes that you dug yourself. So just say it as it is. Don't make judgmental statements. If you say this was shocking, well, who is it shocking? Is it you because you were ignorant and should have known better? Or is it a shock because you've got some preconceived notion as to what it should be? So we need to avoid judgmental statements. A good statement, a useful statement, phrase that we can use is we might say, this is a cause for concern. So if we're talking about, say, the buildings around the campus and we see that the building is falling down, we might not want to actually say that the building is falling down, describe the state of the building, and then we might say that this is a cause for concern. But we're not going to actually say the building's falling down. That might be pushing it a little bit too far. So report things as they are, be as neutral as you can be. Just you're describing the data, you're being guided by the data, but you're not using the data as a political platform. right? You're not spinning the data. This is where statisticians can get themselves a bad name, where they try and carefully select bits and pieces to project a picture which they want to project rather than what the data are telling us. So we have to be the servants of the data that we've collected. We don't want to be projecting something else. So if we avoid adjectives and adverbs, that's usually a step in the right direction. So avoid saying this is good or this is bad, because if you say that, then you've made a judgment on it. You say it's 20%. Now, if the university has a goal of 40%, then you can say that 20% is less than the university's goal of 40%. So what do you have to say? Let the reader decide whether it's good or bad. But I think it's wise to avoid that. The other thing that you must do when you are interpreting your data is to have the survey questions in front of you. You've asked the questions, people in your study answered those questions and no other questions. And after a while, you start to think that you know what the questions were, and you forget what the questions were. And there might be a nuance in the question that you might not have overlooked. So, for example, there's a question about somebody having a job, or they felt that, do you feel that people are entitled to a job? Now, the word entitled is a very loaded question, a very loaded word. That might not have been the best word to have used, but that was the word that was used. And so you have to be very cautious to use the words, and always remember what the survey questions were. So you must have the survey form in front of you, because that's going to provide the limitations of what you can say. That's going to be, if you like, the edge of the table on which your data and your comments are going to be supported. So always have the survey questions in front of you. Don't be afraid to download it 100 times if needs be. The other type of questions that we mentioned the other day were, when we were collecting the data, we talked about open-ended questions and closed questions. So the closed questions are where we say, what is your age range, 18 to 24, 25 to 35, or whatever it might be. So you basically tick the box with the closed-ended questions. But sometimes we need to invite people to be expansive and offer their own, in their own words, answer the questions that we might have. So open-ended questions can be very useful. So the trouble is with open-ended questions, of course, is that we get words. And words are always difficult, because if I ask each of you, how are you feeling this morning, you might all be feeling great, but you're not going to use that phrase, I am feeling great. You're all going to use a different set of words to convey that I am feeling great statement. So I'm going to have to go through and, if you like, translate, theme all of those so that I can then work out how many people are feeling great this morning and how many of you would prefer to be somewhere else. So that's the problem with the open-ended questions. We'd have to theme them and then usually summarize them. That's what we normally do. And that takes a lot of time. And there can be a lot of argument. Sorry?
What do you mean by theme the question?
For example, we recently did the facilities. So the question for those of you online was, what do I mean by a theme? So when we did the facilities survey recently, we asked people what was the one change or one area which you felt could improve a particular space, whether it was a library or a classroom or whatever. You might remember that. So you were allowed to say one thing that you thought would be a major improvement to a particular space. And so we got all sorts of answers. So a lot of the answers focused around this room needs to be bigger. We need to have more study rooms. We need to have more computers. So there was a feeling that there wasn't enough space associated with that, so with, say, the classroom. The classrooms were too small. So we could come up with a theme about space. The other one that came up a lot was technology, about Wi-Fi. the Wi-Fi signal is poor. We need Wi-Fi over here. We need Wi-Fi over there. So there are lots of different ways in which people were saying that the communications technology was deficient.
Okay,
And so you put all those in a bucket that's, if you like, say, Wi-Fi improvements.
okay, so when you're saying open-ended questions may need to be themed, you mean that the responses need to be themed, not when you are asking the question.
Correct, yes. The responses from that question, people express them in their own words, and then you need to go through to see what is in common with those different answers. And so you can usually boil it, not always, but in that case, it was fairly easy to boil it down to about 6 or 8 different themes. Maintenance might have been a theme. People saying, "Oh, the classroom's dilapidated," or "the furniture is dilapidated," or "the labs need better furniture," or things like that. So you could theme them, even though they're expressed in a myriad of different ways.
So
The other nice-
it's not the questions then, it's the responses that need to be themed.
Yes, it's a theme. Yes, yes. The nice thing about the open-ended responses that we get from what we get from the open-ended questions is that we can use those as direct quotations to illustrate the answers that we're getting. So, for example, you wouldn't be at all surprised to appreciate that in the facilities survey that we did, the dormitories got a low ranking, right? Because we all know the problems with dormitories. And one of the students said the dormitories should be bombed. All right? That's a nice, very succinct way of saying they're a disaster.
So, yeah, they need to be read.
But the nice thing about it, I can put that in, but I'm not actually saying that. So I don't get in trouble with the president. Right? This anonymous student is the person who did it. But I can use that as a valid illustration to say that this is something that really needs to be addressed. But I don't use it. Right? And then what we can also do at the end of the report on our data is that we can actually put all the answers to the open-ended questions, put them all in there so people can scan through and make their own determination as to what's going on with those. So the nice thing about the open-ended answers is that they give us information which is in the actually verbatim that we can put into the report to help illustrate the rather dry data, if you like, that we have collected. So SurveyMonkey will automatically give you some simple output, and for many purposes this may be sufficient for what you need. And so, although I described a simple output, that doesn't mean to say that it's not very useful. So I can just give you, this is the survey results that we got from the survey that remember we did a number of these surveys about wearing masks at various times during the pandemic. And so SurveyMonkey tells us the obvious thing first. 175 people participated. Right, so we now know exactly what we did. 175 people participated, and we know that we've got what's about 200 faculty. So we could say that that was a good section of responses. And then we've now got we've got the percentages of where people teach. So we can immediately see that the classroom is the area where most of the 81% of the faculty taught in a classroom. Here, of course, faculty can teach in more than one space, so that's why we've got more responses than people. So we can see where the most important space was, and we can also see that we've got a group of people down here who were also teaching online, which might be, so they wouldn't be worried about face mask. And so you can see that it gives you very simple but useful answers. So about these are the vaccinations. We've got about 85% of the people said that they were fully vaccinated at this stage. And of course we know that whether that is good or bad because we can compare that with the national figures. I think national figures were about 30%, 30 to 40% of people fully vaccinated. So we can say that we were ahead of the game on that one, and we can say that because we have a frame of reference that we can use. So we can say that we were doing very well on that. So SurveyMonkey will go through for each of the questions that you asked. It will give you these simple summaries, and these may be quite sufficient for what you want to do. Right? So there's no need to make it complicated unless it really is complicated. The only thing you might want to notice with these percentages that SurveyMonkey gives you is that it gives it to you to 2 decimal places. Typically, we would present results to 1 decimal place. So we might argue that that's a bit generous with the number of decimal places. So this is just where, so for each question you've got, and it gives you the actual wording from the questions. So that may well be quite sufficient for what you want to do. If it is, stick with it, but go through it carefully to make sure that you obviously fully appreciate what the implications may be. So one of the things that's always useful for us to do is we've got, for example, do you normally wear a mask in your classroom? And here we've got 52% of the people saying yes and 40% saying no. So we can always ask the question, when we've got a set of data like this, we can ask the question, so what? So what? What should we do now that we know this? So if there was a university mandate at that time saying that you should be wearing masks, and I can't remember if there was, but I know for a while that there was a mandate saying you must be wearing a mask, we know that 40% of the faculty weren't being good children. They were breaking the school requirements, the university requirement. So in that case, that would need to remind people that you need to wear your mask. So the so what for this could be that we've got 40% of the people not following the instructions of the university. And that might be a cause of concern to the administration. You had a question?
A question earlier on I think it was vaccinations, and we had like over 80% who were vaccinated, who did the survey.
Yes.
And then you also said that, I think you said nationally there was like 30-40%?
That's right, yes.
So with what you have gotten from your survey, almost over 80%.
85%, say it as it is.
Yeah, but
Oh, no, we have to start, it's good to have it
okay,
now,
I
you see.
cannot remember all of that, so that's why I said it was over 80%, now that you put it up.
Right.
84.48%. Okay? I'm wondering how, let's just say if you wanted to go a little bit further, and we're saying that nationally we only have about 30 or 40% of the persons vaccinated. How would you go about comparing not just the difference in the numbers, but I don't even know how I will word this, but finding out if we're only 30 or 40% nationwide, but we're 84.48% at UB, like, okay.
Interpretation.
Yeah, what that interpretation, what are we saying? Like, just about everybody at UB decided that they wanted to be vaccinated, but the others nationwide, well, maybe some of them who worked in areas where they said, well, you have to be vaccinated and stuff like that, they would have had a high number also. But I'm just trying to figure out if we're only 30-40% nationwide, and UB have a whole 84.48%, how do we interpret that?
Well, I mean, I think, we can't necessarily explain why it is, because we didn't ask that question, we didn't ask why you got vaccinated. We might presume that because these are all employees of a university, and these people are educated and they know about vaccinations, they know about the risk of not, they know the risks that they run through not being vaccinated and the risks they run of getting COVID. They may be a population that felt that their comorbidities were such that they didn't want to die of COVID. So there could be all those factors that resulted in them making a decision to be vaccinated, simply because they have more knowledge, because the university is all about knowledge. Right?
So then.
So they may have been less influenced by the anti-vaxxers, as people were calling them, that might have been very popular on social media for the man in the street, if you like. But we're not on the street, we're in a ivory tower to some extent, you know. So that could be the reason why so many, you know, we have a larger percentage of faculty who were fully vaccinated than the national average, if you like, for want of a better word. But it does mean, the implication of this is that you could argue and say, well, since we've got so many people who are vaccinated, do we need to require people to wear masks within the university? Because you could argue that it's a safe space, or at least a safer space than on the street. Right? So if we're doing something differently here, do we need to follow what might have been recommended for the people outside of the campus? That could be an implication of that. But why we get these figures, the survey is not necessarily very good at telling us why. They will tell us what it is. And we can only say, because we've got figures from elsewhere, we can see that this 85% does look good, if you like, or higher than the national average. So clearly there's a difference, we can say there's a difference between the vaccinations on campus as opposed to the vaccinations off campus within the faculty. Right? Does that sort of answer your question?
Somewhat.
Somewhat, yeah. I can't, the surveys, well, we didn't ask, if we had asked why did you get vaccinated, then that would have probably answered your question a little bit more. In the same way, you know, I don't think there was a study ever done that asked people on the street, why did you, you know, in the general population, why did you or why did you not get vaccinated?
And then another thing too is, they did make the vaccinations, readily available by having them here on campus.
That's right, that's right. So it was easy, if you wanted to do it, it was very easy for you to go and get it done. So that might have been an issue, that might have been a help as well. So, so what I want to do now is just go to show you the, if you want to do a little bit more for your report, SurveyMonkey will also produce an Excel spreadsheet of your data, which doesn't look very exciting when you first look at it. Let me just show it to you. So this is the output that you will get, and what you can do, you can use this if you're familiar with Excel. You can use Excel to summarize the answers, or SurveyMonkey will also download it into an SPS file, and if you can use SPSS, that makes the manipulation of the data even easier. So there are different ways in which
Mr. Fielden, do you get this this Excel spreadsheet download even with the free version of SurveyMonkey, or it have to be the paid version?
I think it's just the paid version. You don't get much for free. So but it does have the option for you to download it in those, so you can download it as a Word document, which is not very exciting, You can download a summary in Excel or also in the PDF. Let me show you the. So if you downloaded, you could download it again. Another option is to download that same summary that I had before. Let me just make it a bit bigger. So this is the same set of data that I showed you in that PowerPoint document PDF that they did. But what it will then do is that it will give you a summary of each question on a different tab of your Excel spreadsheet. So it will give you a graph, and it will also give you a table. So you can change these if you want to make them a little bit better. But you can then also lift these graphs out and put them into your report. So here we are. Question: do most students in your classes wear masks? And you see that there's 56% of people said yes, 37% of people said no, and then we've got another group of people who don't meet face to face at all. So we can see that though the face masking was slightly more than half of the students were wearing masks. So you could take this picture, you could take this graph, and you could paste it into your Word document quite easily. Likewise, you could also take the if you're doing it as a table, you could take the answer. You could take this and you could copy this and paste this into your Word document. So you don't need to retype. The important thing is that you don't have to retype any of these summaries. You can put them straight into your document. One thing that you need to watch with some of these summaries is that they're not intuitive. Let me find one. This one has worked. This one has worked. But what you sometimes find is, let me make this bigger. This is a case of sort of helping the reader or not helping the reader. Is that you'll notice here in this table. Let me just go over one. Sometimes when you've got the answers to a question, there is a inherent logic to the answers. So in this case, we've got a great deal, a lot, a moderate amount, a little, not at all. So there's a logical flow to those answers, right? So we go from a great deal to not at all. So we need to make sure that we keep that logic in the order in which we present the answers, because it wouldn't make any sense to muddle that up. So we can see that we start off a great deal is about 10%, and then a lot is another 12%, and then a moderate amount is 32%, and then we've got a little or not at all. Add those together, and you've got about 45, 46%. So keep the logic of the ordering if you've got logic. Sometimes there is no logic. So, for example, this one here. If we look at this one here, we see we've got this list of classrooms, this list of spaces. There's no logic to these spaces, if you like. Classroom, science, computer, nursing, music, and so on and so forth. We can't put one in front of the other. But what we can do, as they are ordered here, we can put them in the order where the most common one is at the top. Because typically the person who comes first, if you like, we put at the top of the list, and the one who comes last, we put at the bottom of the list. So we can see immediately that classrooms are at the top of the list, and we can see that that's about 80%. So here there's nice logic to ordering to those. We've still got this no physical space online. which we may feel we want to put that up second, because online, we might argue, is still a space, even though it's not a physical space. So we might not want to put this 14.8 second from bottom, right? Because that might be an important point that we want the reader to know. And this goes back to our message. What's the message we want to convey? The message is that that we're very proud, or it's very important to us to convey that we've got nearly 15% of faculty teaching online, then that becomes an important piece for us to say. And so we may want to enhance that and elevate that in a way that's it's not distorting the figures, it's just making the communication exercise, it makes it easier for the person to see the to see the message that we're trying to convey. So we need to watch to make sure that, particularly if we're using Excel, when we're using Excel, what you'll find in Excel if you use, say, pivot tables, it will give you this list here, classroom, science, computer. It will put these options in alphabetical order. It will always put them in alphabetical order. And that might not be what you want. And so you're going to have to manually move them around. So that's a bit of a nuisance, but it is, as they say, it is what it is. So, and then these are the answers to that open-ended questions that we had. So we've got someone saying, in faculty meetings, wearing masks should be optional. So that's a specific thing. And then you've got someone saying the pandemic was over in 2021. So as far as they're concerned, we've moved on from COVID. So you can start to see all sorts of competing ideas now that people are offering. And so you could go through all of these, as we've got someone else saying at this point, wearing masks should be a matter of choice, which again suggests that at this stage people had felt that pandemic was over. So there should be, the implication is that there should be no mandate on this. So we can interpret these, theme these, and come up with a much shorter list of answers, because we've got over 90 answers here. Clearly that's a bit sorry, 85, so this is a bit indigestible, so we could theme them into something that's more manageable. The other thing that we need to, just one last thing before we finish, I said to you earlier on that percentages can be our friends and they can be also not our friends. We have to treat them with caution. Let me just... Anyway, lost my view. Anyway, what did we do? Anyway, we've got the percentages going in these two tables that I've got up. We've got these percentages we've got exactly the same information, but with the percentages going in one case in the rows and another case in the columns. So in the first case, we've got these percentages going down the columns, they add up to 100%. So what this is telling me is that these people who are fully vaccinated, of that group who are fully vaccinated, 60% of them were students. Whereas in the second table now, where I've got the percentages going in the rows, we're saying that of the students, 36% were vaccinated. So depending on whether I want to look at the individual classifications by themselves one at a time, then I would use this second table here with the percentages adding up in the rows to 100. So we can see that the students, 36% of the students were fully vaccinated, compared with the full-time faculty, where we've got nearly 80%, 85%, 86% of them being fully vaccinated. So we can see that there's a clear difference between those two groups. But that's quite a different story compared to those people who are vaccinated or want to be vaccinated and haven't been. We've got, in that group of people who say they want to be but haven't, we've got nearly 90% of the people who say they want to be but haven't. We've got 90% of them being students. So we need to be careful what the message is, because we've got exactly the same set of data in both of these tables, but you can see the percentages are very different. And they're communicating something very different. And there's no right or wrong way. It only becomes right or wrong depending upon the message you want to convey. So if I'm interested in looking at different groupings of students, faculty and staff, then the second table would be the appropriate way. But if I'm trying to look to see which group has got the most people vaccinated, or in the vaccinated group, which are the greater numbers, then clearly the top table would be the one to look at. So you need to literally play around with these to get something that's appropriate for your message. And then the other question is, of course, now that you've learned this information, so what? Where do we go from here? And so what would be the advice that you would give to your supervisor or whoever it is, the president, as to what should be done next? Now that we've got this information, what should we be doing? What is the message in the data that tells us what the course of action should be? And don't be worried about whether the course of action is something that's going to upset anybody, because it's not your message, it's the message in the data. You've always got the data to protect you, if you like. And so if you stick to the data, you're going to be on the right side of any complaints. Any questions? It's now 12 o'clock or so. I don't want to keep you beyond lunchtime, because I've been told there is no lunch. So I better not keep you beyond lunchtime.
Just going back to the data, like you said, it had no logical order, but the information in it definitely was relevant. And you can go by the highest percentage right down to the lowest. So I'm wondering, I think there was one point where it says space, no physical space available. And that was like almost 15%. Would you say that would be valuable if you compared it to what people were surveyed on the year before?
Yeah, let's just go back to, so the question here is, I'm going to put up I think that's the right one. No?
No, I think it was one of the.
Yes, let me just get the right. That's the one, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. So there's a question here about this. There's no obvious logic to these classifications. We could, classroom science. I suppose we could say that we could put them in a logic depending upon the number of students who are taught in classrooms. We could maybe argue it, but on the face of it, there's no real logic to them. They're just different spaces. But the question was, if we were to be looking at these percentages a year ago.
A year earlier.
Yes. So what you're really asking for is a frame of reference to help you interpret the data. And frames of references are very useful. So, for example, if you can, one of the things in the standards is that it does actually ask you if you've got sort of benchmarks that you use from other universities. So we can use those, what we find from other universities, to their data to help us interpret our data to see whether we've got similar results or not. So if we think simply, for example, in terms of graduation rates, we would like every student to graduate. So ideally, we'd like to have 100% graduation rate. Of course, that's never going to happen. So if we've got 60% graduation rate, does that look, in inverted commas, good, or does it look poor? We can only answer that by seeing what happens in comparable institutions like UB elsewhere. And if they've got 70 or 80% graduation rates and we've got 60, then clearly we may not be so good. But if they've got 30 or 20% graduation rates, then we look very good. But I can give you the example that we did when we did from the prison project. We asked the prisoners, how easy was it? Wendy will remember this. We asked them, how easy is it to get drugs in prison?
They answered.
Of course! And it was about 50% of them said it was easy or very easy to get drugs in prison. Is that good? Is that bad? You don't know. All you know is that it's 50%. However, the Ministry of Health had also done a nationwide study on the availability of drugs. So they had asked people who weren't inside the prison, how easy is it to get drugs? And 50% of the people said it was easy or very easy. So now you've got the same figure for the people inside, outside the prison. What does that tell you about prison security?
Very relaxed.
I'm not going to answer the question. I will allow the reader to put their own interpretation on it. But once you've got that frame of reference, then you've got a conversation.
Yes.
But without that frame of reference, you've got a number that just hangs there like a Christmas decoration and you don't know what it means. Right? So having a frame of reference really enables you to say, yes, we're onto something, or no, this is quite ordinary. We can always argue we'd like to be better, but let's face it, most people are ordinary. Most universities are ordinary. And if we are ordinary in that sort of general sense, then we're inhabiting a pretty safe, pretty good space. What we don't want to be is extraordinarily in the wrong direction. So, but if we're ordinary, that's fine. Right? A lot of people will spend thousands of dollars to go to America for an ordinary university education overseas, simply because it's overseas. But it may be no better than the one that they get here on a scholarship.
First time you've answered a question I've asked. No, because that's our question. Between us.
Practice makes perfect. Any other questions before lunch? Any questions online? Is there anybody online?
Now you know we still here. I don't
Thank
have
you
any
very
questions,
much,
sir.
Dr. Hepburn. Thank you.
All right then, thank you very much, everybody. Take care. Have a good week.
Oh, I do have a question. Will the recording be sent to us? The persons who were online, or I guess in person, who in charge of that? Can you answer that question?
Yes, it will be sent.
Yes, I'm told it will be sent.
Great,
I'm not
thank
quite
you.
sure what they will send, but they will send something. It might be a bill. Be careful what you ask for.
No, I only want the recording. You could pray for the bill part.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fielding. Very informative.